These days, Audi's range is an automotive smorgasbord consisting of just about every flavour of car imaginable. The A7 is quite a nice sleek delicacy on their menu, but today there's a new variant. This is the 55 TFSI-E, a plug-in model. So this is the A7 55 TFSI-E, and for those of you who don't speak fluent Audi, the 55 relates directly to its power output. In this case, it's 326 brake horsepower, 273 pounds-feet of torque. TFSI is talking about the 2-litre petrol engine under the bonnet. E relates to the electrical system of this car, which is a 14.1 kilowatt-hour battery, and Quattro means that it has all-wheel drive, although this is actually a new variant of the Quattro all-wheel drive system that can switch to front-wheel drive exclusively for ultra efficiency, but then in the blink of an eye go back to all-wheel drive when the traction is required. Being a hybrid, in the second filler cap you'll find access for a Type 2 charger, which charges at 7.4 kilowatts and takes about 2.5 hours to get a full charge. We've seen up to 28 miles on electric power alone. You can also plug in a 3-pin socket for emergencies, however a full charge from zero takes 7 hours. In terms of efficiency, this hybrid system claims 134 miles to the gallon and 46 grams per kilometre of CO2 in terms of emissions. There's also a performance advantage from having the immediate torque of the battery on board, which gives you a 0 to 62 time of 5.7 seconds. A nice feature of this hybrid platform is that you can actually cruise in pure electric mode at speeds of up to 84 miles per hour. Wrap all of this clever tech in Audi's handsome design language and you've got an attractive proposition indeed. The interior of the A7 is as cosseting and plush as we've come to expect from all top-flight Audis these days. Everything you touch is a premium, rich, quality material, and there's a real air of luxury about the place. There's also this solidity to it. Everything feels really well built, well thought out. Clearly a lot of time, effort and energy has been put into the ergonomics and the placement of buttons, and it has that typical German sense of over-engineering to it. And after a long day in the office, when you come in and you get into these really lovely supportive seats and you're surrounded by an interior that's clearly, you know, a cut above a lot of its competitors, it's a nice place to relax. I mean, it sounds too simple to simply say it feels expensive, but I think that's the best way to sum it up. You get into this car knowing that this is an expensive interior. This space is full of interesting design, premium materials. I mean, there's not a stitch out of place in here, but it's also chock full of technology. The A7 comes loaded with standard equipment, things like rear reversing camera, wireless phone charger, cruise control, but the crowning glory of its standard equipment is this dual screen MMI infotainment system. The upper being a 10.1 inch display, the lower being an 8.6 inch. And the reason for having these two dual screen displays is whenever you have quite an advanced infotainment system, you end up having lots of menus, lots of things to display, and you've got to squeeze that all onto one screen. The way this MMI system works is it breaks it down over two. It means that this lower screen that plays a supporting role can provide an ever morphing situation of buttons tailored to the exact menu it's in. It's pretty ergonomic to use and can be read at just a glance, but it also features something called haptic feedback, which is a bit like what Apple did on the iPhone 8. You see, the iPhone 8 didn't have a physical home button. It had the appearance of a physical home button, but when you pushed it, it felt like a real button. And that's exactly what this does. Through a series of vibrations and resistance and actually an audible noise, it tricks you into thinking you're pushing a button. So actually, without glancing away, you can feel for some of the controls that are there and you know when you've pushed a button, instead of blindly stabbing away at a screen. Audi A7s are also equipped for level 3 autonomous driving. However, the laws in the UK haven't quite caught up with autonomy yet, and so those features lay in wait for the day they do. Now, this particular car is actually an early production model that we've managed to get our hands on, and that means its specification actually doesn't quite match up to what will be offered in the UK. But one pack that has been optioned that will be available is the Comfort and Sound Pack. The sound element comes from the excellent B&O sound system that comes in here, really nice, rich audio quality. But also, the touchscreen now facilitates a 360-degree camera. Well, whilst that's not really anything new, it makes it really easy to park such a big car in tight spaces. And I love this sort of virtual mode that allows you to see a 3D model of the car in the space where you are, to see how close you are to obstructions or curbs. And it's just a really nice and quite impressive thing for passengers to look at. Now, typically with fastback cars, or sportback as Audi likes to call them, you do lose some headroom thanks to that dramatically sloping roofline. And that is the case here, you do lose some. But generally speaking, you still happily fit 2 adults in the outermost seats. Headroom isn't too much of a squeeze, and actually there's loads of legroom to stretch out on long journeys. The middle passenger, as usual, does draw the short straw. This being an all-wheel drive car, there's a sizable transmission hump through the back. But generally speaking, those rear passengers can just relax, sink into their seats a little and enjoy the ride. In fact, this car's even optioned with 4-zone climate control. Practicality is something that extends into the boot with quite a sizable 535-litre cargo capacity. Now that is more than what you'd find in a BMW 8 Series Gran Coupe. Though I will say you do lose some space to the little suitcase of cables you have to carry around with you in this car. It would be nice if there was some underfloor storage or some sort of cubby to hide those away. Plug-in hybrids can sometimes be seen as a bit of a compromise, and again, compromise treated as a bit of a dirty word sometimes, but not in this case at all. This car benefits from all of the great things of an electric vehicle, the silent driving, the way you quietly glide out of your space and it creates this zen-like atmosphere in the interior. It's a very relaxing and eco-friendly way to travel. 0 emissions as you cruise along, and it really fits with the character of this car being a really cosseting, relaxing place to be. And of course the instantaneous torque from the battery is really useful when you need to pull out of a junction or make a fast overtaking manoeuvre. Now, as you might expect, this car has a series of selectable modes for its hybrid drive system. Things like a pure EV mode, a hybrid mode where obviously the petrol engine comes in and gives a helping hand, or of course a mode where you can save the battery for a later point in your journey. But the best thing to do is actually disregard all of that and just leave it to get on with it. In its automatic mode, it has such great situational awareness. It's continuously fed by things like traffic situation, your driving behaviour, even your GPS location. And it's much more clever than simply going, oh, you're in traffic, maybe you should be using electric right now. Because let's say you're on a motorway, you're using a combination of both electric and combustion power, and you come off the slip road, you're about to enter a town, the system goes, this is a densely populated area, let's go into EV. That way you're producing 0 emissions through populated areas. And I really think this is the future of sort of this hybrid plug-in notion, is that the car will make the decision, and the car has the intelligence to be able to go, right, okay, people live here, let's have no emissions here, and actually at a time on a motorway when you need a bit of grunt, start the engine, kick the engine in. And I just think that's really, really clever, and it's one of the most seamless systems I have ever come across. There's no perceptible jolt, the petrol engine is really quiet, so once you're already up and going and you've got a little bit of road noise in the background already, it's very hard to pick out when the engine kicks in and kicks out. And of course the aid of the electric power whenever you need to make an overtaking manoeuvre on the motorway is great as well. It's sort of the best of all worlds. Driven with a bit of verve, this car displays all of the same confidence-inspiring traits as every other Quattro all-wheel drive Audi. There's a really nice, secure, grippy feeling in all weathers that this car gives you, to give you just so much confidence in the chassis beneath you. It really has the ability to hang on strong through fast sweeping bends, and it feels like nothing's ever too much fuss for it. It's that signature planted feel that Quattro has become known for, and despite this new system flitting between front and all-wheel drive, for all intents and purposes from a driver's perspective, it behaves exactly like an all-wheel drive Audi should. However, I will say the A7 is not the most engaging car to drive. There's a general lack of feel through all of the controls, and you feel a bit disconnected from what's going on beneath you. I mean, don't get me wrong, the steering's nice and precise, and like I said, that all-wheel drive confidence the car has is great. You can cross country really quickly in this car. But generally speaking, there's not much for the enthusiast here. The car feels like it could sort of get on with all of this without you, and you're merely the passenger. And I appreciate a lot of Audi customers are looking for that. They're not looking for pure driver engagement. And I guess if you are looking for something more involving to drive, well then maybe something from the BMW stable would suit you better. Now the Audi A7 is a lovely thing to just sit back, relax and let the miles tick on by. But there is something that jars with that luxurious, opulent feel, and that's actually the ride. This being an S-Line car, it sits 10mm lower to the ground and has stiffer suspension for greater resistance to body roll through corners, which is great. But actually, whenever you go over high frequency bumps or there's road imperfections ahead, it really does judder through the cabin much more than you'd perhaps like it to. And I think that's just a bit at odds with the character of the rest of the car, which is a bit of a shame. I really do think that this TFSI-E is a really great all-round package, and in fact I think it might be my pick of the A7 range now. That drivetrain is just absolutely seamless, and I really do love the EV element of it, as well as the combustion that just gives you the confidence that you're going to get to where you need to go, regardless of broken chargers and the infrastructure for EVs that still needs a little bit of work in the UK. The Audi A7 is something of a road-going business jet, and this plug-in model, it allows you to enjoy that in the most efficient way possible thus far. Head to yesauto.com for the latest car news and reviews, and don't forget to check us out on social media. We're in all the usual places such as Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Simply search for Yes Auto.